To order. Our agenda today, we have a number of items that are either administratively approved or were approved by the Planning Commission. There's one item that was disapproved, so we will take it up separately. So as usual, I'll read through those items that will be considered on our consent agenda. And then if there's a need to pull one of those, we will. Otherwise, we will vote on all of those as a consent package. RS 2012-351, sponsor is Tenpenny. I have a letter to approve from him. This is a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Property or his designee to exercise an option to purchase real property for use in the Mill Creek Greenway system. That was administratively approved on 6/15. RS 2012-352, resolution, Hunt and McGuire are the sponsors. Would somebody get one of, they're out in the hall out there. I need them in here for just a minute. Resolution authorizing the Director of Public Property or his designee to exercise options to purchase real property for use in the Whites Creek Greenway system. That was administratively approved on 7/5. There's Mr. Hunt. BL 2012-187, sponsor is Harrison. I have a letter to approve an ordinance declaring surplus and approving the disposition of certain parcels of real property labeled Exhibits A and R. That was administratively approved on 6/6. BL 2012-188, sponsor is Banks. An ordinance to name the private road accessing the townhomes of Shadow Glen Drive to provide better public service, particularly emergency service to the residents of the townhomes. That was administratively approved on May the 31st. BL 2012-151, sponsor is Todd, an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by changing from RS 40 to SP zoning for property located at 5570 Granny White Pike, approximately 300 feet north of Ormond Drive, to permit up to 57 residential units. That was approved by the Planning Commission 9-0 with conditions on April the 12th. BL 2012-158, sponsor is Stites. We'll move that one. That's the disapproved. We'll come back to that. BL 2012-173, sponsor is Moore. I have a letter from the council lady, an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by making applicable the provisions of a neighborhood landmark overlay district on properties located at 609 and 611 Wedgewood Avenue. And that was approved by the Planning Commission 6-0 on May the 10th. BL 2012-174, sponsor Banks, an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance of and by amending a portion of the Seven Springs PUD for property located at 300 Seven Springs Way, zoned OR 40, to permit 280 multifamily units where 125,000 square feet of office space was previously approved. That was approved by the Planning Commission on May the 10th, 7-0, approved with conditions. BL 2012-176, sponsor Tenpenny. And again, I have a letter from the councilman. An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance by changing from SP zoning to permit a 7,500 square foot automobile repair and service facility to SP zoning to permit a 4,000 square foot automobile repair and service facility for property located at 2849 Logan Street. And that was approved 7-0 with conditions by the Planning Commission on May the 10th. BL 2012-177, sponsor Langster. An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance of and by changing from RM 40 to SP zoning for property located at 111 Ackland Park Drive and within the 31st Avenue and Long Boulevard UDO and the I-440 impact overlay to permit up to 347 multifamily units. That was approved 8-0 with conditions by the Planning Commission on May the 24th. BL 2012-178, sponsor Purdue. An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the zoning ordinance of and by changing from CS to SP zoning for properties located at 2355 and 2372 Gallatin Pike to permit auto sales, used, auto repair, auto services, and auto parking. That was approved 6-0 with conditions by the Planning Commission on May the 10th. BL 2012-179. That's Stites. We'll have to move that one to the Hill. BL 2012-180, that's Stites. BL 2012-181, sponsor Claiborne, an ordinance amending section 17.40.400 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws pertaining to the membership of the Historic Zoning Commission of the Metro Government of Nashville and Davidson County. And that was approved with an amendment 9-0 by the Planning Commission on 6/14. So are there any questions about any of those? Councilman Stanley.
I would just ask that 151 be taken off the consent agenda.
All right. 151. Anybody else? Two more. Okay, we've got two more that we need to add in. BL 2012-182, sponsor is Holloman or Dowell. I saw both of them. Ask him to step in the room, please. An ordinance amending Title 17 of the Metro Code to create on-site agricultural sales as a new use to be permitted with conditions in the AG and AR2 zoning districts and specifying the applicable conditions and signage standards. That was approved 9-0 by the Commission with an amendment on June 14th. And BL 2012-183, sponsor Claiborne, an ordinance to amend various sections of Title 17 of the Metro Code to refine standards of the alternative zoning districts related to building placement and bulk standards, and that was approved 9-0 with an amendment on June the 14th. So we're pulling 151, and I have two items from Councilman Stites that I don't have a letter on, so we'll have to move those to the Hill here. And then we have a disapproval. Anything else on the consent agenda need to be pulled? All right, those in favor of the consent agenda, let me have your aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Bill 2012-151, sponsor Todd, amends or changes from RS40 to SP zoning for property located at 5570 Granny White Pike. And as previously stated, that was approved by the Commission with conditions 9-0 on April the 12th. Councilman Stanley.
Yes, I would just like to ask the planning staff specifically what was the recommendation made in the sub-area 14 plan for this acreage along Granny White Pike?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you mean what is the land use policy for this particular property? It is residential low, which is 1 to 2 units per acre.
Okay. I was going to mention the fact that, of course, the Granny White residences in this area are extremely valuable. And by allowing a substantial portion, parcel of this Granny White Pike to be developed in a cluster lot setting, that could have an adverse impact on the surrounding existing residences in this area. So I would just like for the Metro Council to consider that. I have a number of issues with placing either cluster lot options or urban design overlays in communities where already you have development, and it does nothing but have an adverse impact on the surrounding communities, surrounding properties. So I would just like to have some discussion as to why this cluster lot option was allowed. And also, I have received communication that there is a substantial petition that was signed by a number of people, about 391, I think, in and around this area, that were against this cluster lot option. Now, I will say that they had mentioned to me that they believed that if they were able to work more thoroughly with the developers, they could reach an agreement. But I would just want to make sure that this cooperative cooperation between the residents, the existing residents, and the developers, that it be allowed to bring about an appropriate and an acceptable development in this area. I would just mention that. And with that, I'll just open it up to anyone from the planning staff.
Well, as your representative on the Planning Commission, I will tell you that this was one of the longest discussions, I think, that I've been a part of since I've been on the Planning Commission for the last almost a year. And there is a map on your desk that shows the layout of the homes as they are proposed to be placed in this acreage. Over half of this parcel will be left in a natural state. It has significant geographic issues that would prevent a normal development the way that the surrounding area has developed. And so as we worked through that process and looked at the recommendations from our forester, who says that well over 100 of the trees that are on the property are going to be preserved. Some trees that are very, very old. And the extent that the developer went to address lighting, to address drainage, all of those things that we had to consider, it just seemed to the commission that this was the best possible way to develop this in a meaningful way. And so we voted unanimously to approve this. Anybody from the commission or the staff?
Yeah, I think you summarized pretty well what why the Planning Commission recommended approval of this. One thing I'll point out, Brenda did mention that this is in residential low policy, and this plan is consistent with that policy and with the special policies that are part of that sub-area plan. Under the existing zoning, if they did a traditional cluster lot subdivision, 56 dwelling units would be permitted. So under this SP rezoning, it has a much greater preservation of open space, and it would allow up to 57 residential units. And there are architectural standards that are made part of this plan that wouldn't be part of the traditional cluster lot subdivision if it were just done under the existing zoning. So those are parts of the reasons why the Planning Commission recommended approval of this.
Councilmember Todd, you're the sponsor of this bill. Would you like to?
Am I on? Okay. the Planning Commission did approve with 57 units. I think they have since dropped one, and one of the comments from the Planning Commission was there was concern about one of the units that had its own driveway right onto Granny White, and that one's been dropped. So I think the proposal now is for 56 units, which is what they could already do under the existing zoning. There is a letter on your desk dated today, July 16, 2012, from Stites and Harbison, and I think it does a good job answering the different questions. Councilman Stanley raised some good questions, but I think those questions you ask are all answered in this. I don't know if you got one of these. Good. This is the most difficult matter I've had since I've been on the council, and there are lots of folks here today that are concerned about this. I was misquoted in some emails as saying that if I lived next to it, I would be against it. I think what I was saying was if I lived next to this, my preference would be to see this remain a green space forever. It's not going to remain a green space forever. It's going to be developed, and I think it needs to be developed in the smartest way possible. And when so many of those homes in Forest Hills and around there were built, SP zoning was not allowed back then, and so every inch of space was used. Homes were built up on cliffs, and when we had the rains in 2010, we had 40 landslides in the Forest Hills and Oak Hill area out there. With SP zoning, you could have the same density but move some of the houses down into the flat part, and I don't think there'll be as many slides. I think this is smarter planning. Again, contrary to the emails that have been going around, I don't have a dog in this hunt. The Planning Commission approved it unanimously. I've looked at this. I think it's smart planning. People on the committee are going to have to make their own decision and vote up or down on this based on what they've read and seen in this. Thank you.
Councilman Dominic?
Thank you, Chairman. Can you please describe what were the recommendations the Planning Commission made? Because they said approved with those recommendations or not approved. Can you explain what those were?
There were some, and you'll have to help me if I miss some. There were some issues. One of the issues was had to do with the separate drive. Lighting was another in terms of street lighting and how that would be handled. Some of those conditions have to do with turning those, using lighting that is more downward focused on the roadway rather than being able to expand out. And part of that concern was for the area that this is in with the observatory. There was also some stormwater runoff issues, and some of the arrangement of the streets and roads help to create areas where those water can be contained or controlled more than building retention ponds in it, as you might find in a normal development. There's a little more imaginative use of handling water. Can you think of other things that?
I think that you've captured them all.
Okay.
Have those amendments been made to the plan? And if not,
Well, that was, that was the condition of the Planning Commission passing or approving this request, is that those things would be incorporated into the final site plan.
Councilman Todd, do you know if those have been incorporated and where would they be illustrated?
Yes, it's my understanding that approval is conditioned on those being accomplished. So if they're not accomplished, it won't go into effect. But it's a conditional approval.
Right. They haven't presented a final site plan at this point in time, right?
That's correct. After, they have 120 days after the council decision to provide us with the corrected copy of the plan. And if they don't do that within the 120 days, it has to come back to you.
So if it was approved and those were not included, then it would be nullified and have to come back and be reconsidered.
That's correct.
All right. There's still some concerns. I know a number of residents are opposed to it as it is. They're not opposed to redeveloping the site. I don't think most of the folks have communicated with us have stated that they're not opposed to redevelopment. They're not opposed to doing it in an environmentally sensitive manner. Their concerns are how it impacts the community as a whole, in particular on Granny White Pike and the small cluster lots. I think a compromise could be reached if those parties are willing to sit down and discuss that. Right now, I don't know if that's occurred or if it will occur. As it is right now, since all I continue to get is that there has been no compromise sought, I don't want to vote against my colleague, but I can't vote for it, so at the present time I'll have to abstain. But there are some concerns. I think that we could get this if the sponsor's willing to work with some of those folks and sit down and negotiate some options.
Councilman Todd?
Thank you, Chair. There have been 5 public meetings on this, and one of the early proposals included townhomes here, and the neighbors did not like that, and the developer took that feature out. They also didn't like the extra driveway on Granny White. The developer took that out. But there have been negotiations back and forth. I mean, I think we're kind of at a point now where it's time to vote on this one way or the other. I'm not sure there can be additional compromises and maintain what they want to do.
Council Lady Allen?
Could someone from planning explain again about the cluster lot option under the existing zoning? It's my understanding that that can happen without any kind of zoning change or discussion, that the cluster lot option can be used under the existing RS-40 zoning, and that would allow smaller cluster lots. How is that different from what they're doing now?
You are correct. They could, under their current zoning, come in with a plat, cluster lot subdivision, where they could reduce the lot sizes of some of the lots and wouldn't even have to come to council for rezoning. What they have chosen to do, though, is the cluster lot will only allow them to drop to, I believe, 20,000 square feet, and wouldn't preserve nearly as much open space. So they've chosen to do an SP so they can get a similar number of lots, but preserve a lot more of the property and keep it in open space.
So it is a true statement that 56 new properties could be developed on this space.
That's correct, and I believe that you may have a copy of the plan that they drew to show how they could meet that.
Okay, so I guess what I'm seeing is that what the SP does is doesn't increase any more the number, but it provides a number of protections to the green space, to the lighting. It deals with the stormwater, and it all gets down to the 1 acre lot issue. And I also understand the subdivision regulations, which they cited in there somewhere, require either matching the existing or screening. Can you address that as well?
That's correct. If you have, you'll notice that there's a buffer around the plan, and if under both the cluster lot option and with the special policy that's on this particular property in the community plan, they were required to do substantial buffering of adjacent properties.
So that it would not necessarily be visible from the adjacent properties, that
That's
it
correct.
looked different.
Yeah.
And is there anyone here who can address property values in terms, I think that's the other concern that I heard, was that this will hurt property values because these are smaller lots. Can someone, real estate-wise, speak to price points or where these would be and how that affects property values?
I'm afraid I'm not able to do that.
Okay. I think it's my understanding there 700,000 might be a starting point. Is that something we've heard anywhere?
That is a number around what I've heard, that these will be expensive homes.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't have any other lights. We ready? Councilman Stanley?
I just want to mention the fact that, of course, a large percentage, because it's a cluster lot option, the vast percentage of these developed homes are going to be located down near Granny White Pike. And of course, I can understand the fact that this is has issues with avalanches or problems with drainage, things like that. But I still feel like I'd like to have an indication as to what is the differences or the variations in size among the homes that are going to be built in this complex, and also the existing homes along Granny White Pike. Because I know that that is one of the most valuable areas of Davidson County, residential areas of Davidson County. I think it's important that we preserve and protect the existing homes as much as we can. So I'd like to have some indication as to what are the variances in the sizes of these residential homes in this development.
I didn't see this.
Can the Planning Commission give me any indication?
I'm sorry, I missed the end of that question.
I want to know what the variations in the sizes of the homes are in this development.
Do you mean the size of the lots?
Not the lots,
Square footage.
specifically the homes.
The square footage of the home.
I don't, that wasn't part of the SP, a minimum or maximum size of the residential units.
Well, one of the things that we've got in these maps are diagrams of homes or structures that are going to be built. And some of them are very, very small. Some of them are large. Some of them are medium. So I would like some indication as to the variation and what impact will this variation have on the existing homes, large homes that exist along Granny White Pike.
Councilman Todd, can you, do you have any information about the proposed square footage of these?
I don't. I don't know if someone from the developer could speak to that, or if, I don't.
Is there anyone in the chamber? All right. Just, the question is, square footage wise, what are the proposals for these cottage structures?
We have a variety of lot sizes that will accommodate houses. For the majority would be in the 2,800 to probably 4,800 square foot typical, with prices that would start in the 600s in excess over 1.3 million. That is the formula for this project. It's not about necessarily being bigger houses, but more appropriated houses for the site to preserve the trees and the landscape.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Councilman Stanley?
I will say it does pretty much. Of course, he didn't go into specifics a lot. I'd like to see some of these parcels, some of these homes that are drawn on these maps are very, very small. So I'd like to have some range of size.
I think he gave
in
you,
these
he
existing
said from the 2,800 to the 4,000 plus.
Well, and I'd like to say, I'd like to have some indication about what are the size of the existing homes along the Granny White Pike, the homes that are already in existence. These are big homes, and they are valued at, they are extremely valuable, and they bring in tax money for the city. So I wouldn't want to have any impact on adversely impacting, I wouldn't want to have any input on adversely impacting the Granny White Pike area.
Councilman Todd, could I make a request of you to, between now and our meeting tomorrow evening, to get a square footage range of existing homes along the Granny White area?
Sure, will do.
Thank you. Any other
Councilman Bedney.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
I'm going to vote against this. Not because I don't like the project, because I think it's a great project. We have a similar project in my district called Lenox Village, where by using this way of zoning, it created lots of open space that the community can use. For me, it has more to do with the fact that who's going to control the city, the growth of the city, how we're going to shape it, how much of a say the citizens will have in how the city grows. And for me, I'm sure Councilman Todd did a good job trying to connect with people, but we are still clearly having a failure to communicate, paraphrasing somebody else. And so for me, it tells me that the community came up with a plan years back on how they wanted their environment to be, and we're getting ready to change it now if we approve this. And if we approve it against the wishes of such a big percentage of the people, I believe personally, are failing to do our job in being stewards of the built environment. So that's why I'm going to vote against it. Not because it's a judgment on this type of development, which I think are good, but developments are tools, and how you do it, it's a tool of how to modify the environment in different parts of the city, so it has to be appropriate. Thanks.
I just can't answer for sure whether we would recommend approval or not.
All right, we ready to vote?
Really thinking about it a little bit more longer.
Those in favor, let me see your hand. All right. Those opposed, let me see your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And those abstaining? All right. So the vote is 2 for, 4 against, and 1 abstention. All right, moving on to, let's see, we have Councilman Stites is with us now, so we have BL 2012-180, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of and by amending a portion of Larchwood Commercial PUD located on portion of property at Percy Priest Drive, approximately 1,075 feet west of Bell Road, Zone CL, and proposed for CS zoning to permit the development of self-storage facility. And BL 2012-179, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of and by changing from CL to CS zoning for a portion of property located at Percy Priest Drive, located 1,075 feet west of Bell Road. Both of these were approved 7-0 by the Planning Commission on April the 24th. So we can handle those as a late vote, since the councilman is with us. Those in favor? Any opposed? Both motions pass. All right, we have one other item, Councilman Stites, BL 2012-158, an ordinance amending Chapter 17.04, 17.08, and 17.16 of the Metropolitan Code pertaining to the storage of boats. This was disapproved unanimously by the Planning Commission 7-0 on June the 28th. Councilman Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill, just a little bit of background real quickly. There's nowhere in Metro Code is boat storage explicitly laid out, as was detailed in the bill analysis by Mr. Cooper. And so what this bill attempted to do was to designate a place where boat storage could go and could go under CL with certain conditions. The bill that was previously passed on first and second reading that we had before us the last meeting, as I stood up and said, was an admittedly bad bill. It allowed boat storage under a whole host of zones, including shopping centers and there are a whole list of things. The amendment that you should have now is an amendment that essentially says that boat storage will be allowed under CL, Commercial Limited, and it will only be allowed with certain conditions. And those conditions are that the boat storage has to be within 2 miles of a Corps of Engineer lake dock. The building cannot be in excess of 18 feet tall, and most importantly and most restrictive, there has to be a planned unit development overlay that explicitly states that boat storage is a permitted use. And so with those conditions, it essentially locks it down. First of all, with the 2 mile exemption, there's only about 3 or 4 council districts that I think this would even apply to, but then once you put the PUD overlay requirement, it essentially locks it down to what I think may be one piece of property in the county. So with that explanation, and if there's barring any questions, I would ask for the committee's approval.
Council Lady Allen?
Josh, I'm sorry, I'm still confused. Your other 2 bills changed your particular piece of property from CL to CS, is that correct?
That's correct. And I'm sorry, on the background part, this is an 11-acre piece of land, and the boat storage facility will go on 4 acres, and so that left 7 acres that abut a neighborhood. And the neighbors, by and large, and as you saw at the public hearing, were in favor of the boat storage facility because it keeps traffic at a minimum. Currently, there's some dumping and other things that are going on this 4 acres where the boat storage facility potentially will go. And so this ties up that 4 acres, and it prevents, convenience stores or other undesirable things from going there. But their concern, the planning department said that there's not a zoning for boat storage, but we think the planning department thought it should be CS. The neighborhood was very averse to that because of the remaining 7 acres. They correctly assumed that if this 4 acres got rezoned to CS, that it would just have a natural tendency to more easily be rezoned to CS for the remaining 7 acres. And the entire 11-acre parcel has a bit of a checkered past, with multiple developers coming and trying to develop the property, and some, I think, tried to slide stuff in on them when they weren't looking. So the neighbors come very guarded. They felt like this was a win-win because it got the boat storage facility there, but it also allowed them to maintain the CL zoning for the 4 acres, which in theory and in some to some reasonable extent would also make it a little less likely that the remaining 7 acres would be rezoned to CS. And that the rezoning is one of the big hesitations of the CS zoning, is one of the big hesitations of the neighborhood.
And so we just approved 179, which changes the zoning to CS, but is that necessary if this bill passes?
If this bill passes, 179 will be withdrawn.
Will be withdrawn. Okay. And then from a planning standpoint, which is better policy from the big picture viewpoint?
Well, in terms of doing a text change or the rezoning?
In terms of, what we should do for the areas in Nashville that are near lakes, does it make sense to put boat storage in CL with these conditions underneath the PUD? And that's going to be a useful thing in other places near other
Well, that was our concern when we made a recommendation, when the staff reviewed this and made a recommendation to the commission, and when the commission made their recommendation, the concern was that the original bill was pretty open-ended, that it was going to allow boat storage in commercial shopping centers and a lot of different areas that aren't currently permitted for that use, and we felt like that it was going to sort of introduce more industrial type uses more into commercial areas. And with this text amendment, it does narrowly define where boat storage can go, and having just gotten this a couple minutes ago, we haven't had time to really review it to see how wide of an impact it will have, but just reading it quickly, it looks like it is pretty narrow and it will have pretty small impacts. So
And by that, you're referring to the text amendment in
The
158?
current text amendment, as amended,
Okay.
will have pretty narrow impacts, it looks
This one.
like. So in terms of a policy standpoint, depending on how many properties this impacts, it's probably about the same as the zone change. I mean, that zone change will only impact that one property, and this text change, I don't know how many properties it will impact, but it looks like it's not going to impact very many. So it's probably a toss-up.
Okay, thank you.
The concern that the Planning Commission had in disapproving this was that we didn't think it was appropriate to have boat storage in CS, CA, in the commercial core, in shopping center zoned areas, and there was also included in that industrial distributing. The original bill that we had was to provide this in commercial limited, and there were conditions that were placed on that. But there were no conditions that were placed on all of these other list of areas. And so the commissioners didn't take long to decide that it's not appropriate to allow boat storage in, carte blanche.
And are those other areas now gone? They're not in this anymore?
Well, I haven't seen the amendment, but according to what the councilman says, he has taken out everything with the
So it's-
exception of the CL
Just
with
CL.
the additional restrictions that you've
correct.
placed on that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood what was going on.
Okay. Are there other questions? Councilman Stites?
I appreciate everybody bearing with me again. As I said last time, this is my first zoning deal. I for sure could have been done better. I appreciate the help of the planning department and of Mr. Cooper. I think to answer your question, I think this could, there's probably a better way to do this, frankly. But the planning department offered, why don't you do an SP? And the neighborhood explicitly stated, we had 2 community meetings about this piece of property, and they explicitly said, we don't want an SP, we want CL. And so for that reason, as their representative, I'm moving forward with the CL, and I would ask for everyone's approval.
All right. Other comments, questions? Those in favor of the bill as amended, taking out the list of commercial areas and limiting it to commercial limited with the additional restrictions. Those in favor of that as amended that way? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion passes then. All right, that finishes up. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.